Today I'm making another InkTober sketch and reading you a spooky story. If you prefer my no-talking ASMR videos, don't worry, I'll post a no-talking version later of the full real-time sketching and inking of this drawing. Again, I'll start with the story, which will get a bit dark, and then continue by talking about the supplies I used, the drawing itself, and what I learned from this and last week's InkTober drawings. I was inspired to make this ink drawing by the Mexican folktale about La Llorona, the weeping woman. There are multiple different versions of this story, and the one I'll read you might be a mix of those different versions. So if you already know about La Llorona, you may have heard a different version of it. There was a young, beautiful servant woman called Rosa, as in Rose, in a Mexican village, and her family was very poor. One day, a nobleman was traveling through her village and saw her, and they fell in love. They got married even though the man's father did not approve of Rosa, and built a house in the village. Over the years they had 3 children, but the man would travel a lot for his work and leave Rosa to take care of the children by herself. Eventually, the man got less interested in Rosa and the children and would come back to them less often. Finally, he stopped coming back at all. Years later, Rosa was walking by the Rio Grande River and saw him in a carriage with another, younger and wealthier woman. Realizing he had left them and the children would grow up in poverty, she threw the children into Rio Grande and drowned them. Then, seeing the bodies floating in the river and realizing what she had done, she jumped into the river, hoping she would die with them. La Llorona is the ghost of Rosa crying by the river looking for her children, and it's believed that she causes misfortune for those who hear her crying. So, if you hear her by the river, you should run the opposite way. Especially children should beware, because she might mistake them for her own. Okay, that was the story, and the reason I chose this folklore was that I've drawn and painted La Catrina or the Sugar Skull Girl before, and I wanted to draw my version of another Latin American or Spanish folktale. I made the last InkTober drawing very black and white. I used only black lines and black fills and left other areas white. While that drawing had striking contrasts, it was still very two-dimensional. So for this drawing I decided to add grey tones. I started by freehand sketching with a blue colored pencil. I had made a couple of rough sketches in my sketchbook and tried to somewhat follow them when sketching in a bigger size onto watercolor paper. I learned my lesson from using thin sketchbook paper the last time, and having the ink bleed through. The watercolor paper was from my usual 250 GSM rough textured watercolor block, and the paper size is A4, but I cut it in half, so this is A5. I cut out a diamond shape from scrap paper to use as a stencil to draw a symmetrical shape behind the character to use as a frame. And then, to make a bit more detailed and precise drawing than last time, I started inking with micron pens instead of going straight in with the dip pen. Micron pens are also waterproof, which worked out well later when applying ink washes. I inked her hair and the edges of the diamond shape with a dip pen, but then filled in the veil and added shadows with a brush, diluting the ink with water. This is acrylic ink, by the way, and all my supplies will be listed below. I was thinking to make her dress black, but I found out that she is sometimes called the woman in white, so I left it white, but shaded with grey. I had also decided to add hints of the river in the background inside the diamond shape. So the final illustration turned out more grey than I intended. If the last drawing of the bride in a coffin was very black and white, this one is very much grayscale. So for my final Inktober video next week, I'll try to balance those two things out. Having contrast, but not being too two-dimensional. As she's the weeping woman, I added tears dripping down her face, trying to make the end of the tear darker, since that's where her eye makeup would drip down, and the areas under the eyes lighter. As I was researching for writing the story of La Llorona for this voiceover, I found artworks of La Llorona as a skeleton, kind of like La Catrina. And I kind of wish I had drawn her that way to enforce that this is her ghost. But maybe this is her before she drowned. Also, you'll find prints and other merch of this drawing and my other artworks in my Redbubble shop, if you want to check it out. I talked about Inktober more in last week's video, but if you don't know what it is, I'll write about it in the description below the video. If you like this video, I do make both art tutorials and art tips videos, as well as ASMR art videos like this, and there's a new video every week. My next video will be the final real-time Inktober drawing and storytelling video in this little series. And it includes a monster. Can you guess what the story is? Okay, I'll talk to you again next week.